Hi guys, Paul from Paramount and Visu Technologies. I've now been in the industry for 35 years, and for the last 20 years I've particularly specialised in tuning and styling Jaguar cars. You might have seen a video we did very recently where we purchased this old girl. We went out to purchase this XF because we needed to develop some new products for it. But I did find quite a difficult journey actually trying to find an XF to buy. We certainly kissed some frogs, and I wanted to do a little video here today just to show you some of the things that we found wrong with some of the XFs we were looking at, and some of the things that you want to look out for if you are going to buy a Jaguar XF. So when looking to buy a car, there are three things that I want to see even before I get out and go and see a car. I'd like to run a HPI check on the car first. That'll give me an indication of what the mileage looks like, any accident damage or insurance claims that I should be aware of. I like to see a copy of the service history, and that is something I will ask the seller to send me before I come out. And I also spend some time going through the MOT records. These are a little gold mine really, because it's almost like having an independent inspection. If you go and look at the last 3 MOTs and any advisories, they might pick up on things like worn tyres, tired brakes or suspension. Not enough to fail an MOT, but something you definitely want to be aware of if you're going to go out and look at a car. So look at those things, and it might even save you a journey and a lot of wasted time. If those first 3 things don't stack up, maybe this isn't the right car for you to look at. So these XFs are an absolute fabulous car, and with a price tag of when new was probably about 70+ thousand pounds, the fact that you can pick one up now for less than 10,000 pounds sounds like an absolute bargain. I mean, this one was actually just 7,000 pounds. That is an awful lot of car for the money, but some time has passed since it left the showroom clearly, and if it's not a good example, you can quickly find yourself with really large expensive repair bills. A set of tyres on one of these cars, you can easily spend £600 to £700 on a set of tyres. A main dealer service might cost you £1,000, and even if that service is done at a specialist, you could still attract a £500 repair bill. Tyres are there, brakes are the other one. Of course, a full set of brakes on this car could cost you upwards of £1,000 by the time you've had it fitted. And these aren't issues with the car, this is normal wear and tear. So when you're going to go and look at one of these cars, knowing that the brakes have been done recently or it's been serviced very recently, actually could save you thousands within the first weeks of ownership. So when you see that car that looks like it's the wonderful one that you've been looking for, just remember, all that glitters is not gold. Slow down, let's take a proper look at this car, let's look at the service history and the condition of this car before we start getting our checkbook out. So if you've decided the service history looks good, you're happy with the HPI check, and now it's time to go and physically see the car, again, just slow down a little bit here. Let's take a good look at this car. What I like to do, look down each side of the car. You're looking for any dents or knocks. I want to check panel alignment. Has this car had an accident? Does it look right? Has the paint got little marks in it where clearly it's been painted before? So take your time, take a good look around the car, look for the tyres. What do the tyres look like? Are they a good brand of tyre? Has it got very, very cheap remolds on it? These sort of little things. Nicks and dents might not stop you buying the car, but it is something you might want to have a haggle about. So just overall, does this car look genuine? Does it look like it's had a lot of paint work, or is it a nice, clean, straight example? Talking about specific things now with the XF, they do suffer a little bit from engine problems. Now that's not to say the 5-litre engine in theory is absolutely bulletproof, but 3 things are a bit of an issue with them. They do suffer from water leaks, and that's something you're going to want to look at. The superchargers can become noisy, and that's something we're going to look at, and timing chains too on the petrol. On a diesel version, you want to make sure that the cam belt has been changed and the timing belt is changed, and it's not going to cause you an immediate repair bill. On the gasolines, they don't have a timing belt, but it's a chain, and it can become noisy. So let's have a quick look under the bonnet. So here we have the 5-litre supercharged engine that forms the heart of the XF. In general, these engines are absolutely bulletproof, good for 100,000 miles and many, many more. But there are a couple of niggles that can let them down, and I want to just cover those with you now. First one, water leaks. These engines can be a bit prone to water leaking, and they typically come from 2 or 3 different areas. The water pump can be a bit weak. Now that is just down the front here, and what you want to do when you're looking at these cars is any little white residue or watery residue that's normally dried, like a powdery residue underneath the water pump, that could be an issue. It's certainly the sign of an issue. And then the others are not quite so easy to inspect. There's what's called a Y pipe, which is right at the front of the engine just here and runs underneath the supercharger, and a valley pipe, sometimes known as a throttle control cooling pipe. Both of these pipes can split with age. Now, if you're going out to look at a car on a customer's drive, it's not quite so easy to see either it's leaking or it's not leaking, but look for tells like low coolant level. That can always give something away. And when the engine's running and it's hot, have a good look around. Are there any signs of any steam escaping from anywhere? The other thing, of course, you can do is ask the customer, the owner at the moment, have he had any of these pipes changed? If they've never had these pipes changed, just bear in mind they are likely need doing at some point, and that could be a repair bill coming your way. So it's something you might want to build into the haggle, as it were, as you're speaking about pricing. Other things on this car, the supercharger, generally a very, very reliable unit, but they can become a bit knocky. Now, they do this in two ways. One way that they fail is the front coupling become noisy, and what you normally hear on that is you'll be running the engine. When you turn the engine off, you'll hear a donk, 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 three little thubs typically in a row. That's a very strong sign that the supercharger coupling needs replacing. It's not particularly expensive, but the supercharger does need to come off, and that's an immediate 6+ hours labour, so you're going to attract a little bit of a bill for that. The other thing on these charges is the middle bearings become noisy. Now, this is a bit more serious. What you'll get with this when the engine is running is quite a constant sort of light thumping. It'll sound like it's coming from the top of the engine, not the bottom of the engine, and you'll just get this sort of thumper, thumper, thump noise going on continuously. That could be a repair bill that could be quite nasty. The bearings can be replaced and your supercharger can be reconditioned. Expect that to cost you about £1,000, maybe a little bit more. But if it's been in that condition for some time, the blades of the supercharger can actually, as they start to mesh, if the bearings have too much free play, the blades can start to rub into each other. If that happens and it's done for any period of time, the blades become permanently damaged, and now you're talking about a new supercharger. So in short, listening for any thumpy noises from the top of the engine, or when you turn the engine off, any sort of additional noise after, again, a sort of thump thump, that's something you definitely want to get a professional to look at before you start parting with any money. So the last thing I want to talk about on this particular engine is timing chains. Now, the diesels have a timing belt. It's a rubber belt that needs changing as part of a service. You definitely want to make sure that's been done if you're looking to buy a diesel. And if any doubt at all and you buy a diesel and you don't know when the belt was last changed, change it immediately. A failure of a timing belt will cause catastrophic damage to your engine. Don't take a risk. Now, on the 5-litre supercharged, these run a chain system. The chains don't need servicing and in theory last the lifetime of the engine. But that's not always the way this goes. Sometimes the chains can stretch a little bit with mileage. The tensioners become weak, allowing a little bit of free play. Too much free play in that chain and it can actually jump a tooth and completely destroy your engine. But the key sign of this normally, before they get to the point of failure, is they rattle. And what you're listening for at idle is a sort of scrapey rattle from the front of the engine. It'll be quite constant and can be lost almost with the engine noise, but it will be in a different noise over and above the running of the engine that sounds the same, like a scrapey, rattly sound. Again, if in any doubt at all, these engines should be still, smooth and purring away on idle. Strange noises, thumps or rattles, pull up the handbrake on your sale. Let's get a professional to listen to this and make sure you're not buying yourself into repair bills. So as you're walking around the car and inspecting it now, just take a time to look at the wheels and the tyres and also the brakes. These tyres are quite expensive, so you want to make sure if you can that they've got good tread on them. If they've got poor tread on them, obviously that's the time to talk about haggling over the price, but also look for tyre wear. We want to make sure you've got nice even wear. If there's uneven wear, particularly if they're very bald on the inside, for example, that might give you an indication that there's a tracking or geometry problem, which again might need checking out. These big 20-inch wheels look fabulous, but they are also a little bit delicate. They're subject to be curbed quite easily, so check for damage on the outside rim, but also because of the size, they can buckle quite easily on potholes. And whilst we mentioned buckled wheels, I can tell you now, this particular car does in fact have one wheel buckled here on the front. So when you go on road tests, you want to feel for any vibration or any unevenness. Normally you'll get this little bit feeling like a out of balance tyre. Don't write it off as just an out of balance tyre. Could be a buckle, which could come with a bit more of a repair bill. And then as you walk around the car, take an opportunity with these wheels that are quite open, you can actually get in and have a good look at the brakes too. These are quite corroded on this car. In fact, one of the first jobs we're going to do with it is change the brakes all round. If you get that done at an independent, it's going to be quite an expensive repair, and of course being brakes, you can't be messing around with safety, so you can see them quite well through the wheels, so have a good look and see what condition the brakes look to be in. So one of the lovely things about these cars is they're really, really well specified. There's widgets and gizmos for everything, and it does feel like true luxury, or at least it did when they were new. These seat bolsters can become quite worn, and whilst they can be repaired, it can start to make the car look a little bit tatty. So take a little bit of time and look at the quality and the interior trim. I can pretty much guarantee on a lot of these cars, the back seats have hardly ever been sat in and look like new, but the front ones can start to look a little bit tired. And then all this technology is a great thing until it goes wrong. It can be quite annoying when little things don't work. So spend a bit of time just looking around the car and checking things out. Do the heated seats work? Do the folding mirrors work? Do all the vents on the dashboard open and close as they should do? Do all the windows go up and down without making strange noises or failing to work at all? And these things can be really quite expensive to repair. Satellite navigation is another one you want to check. Does it work correctly? And it just, is this as you would expect to find it? And are there any other things that aren't working which may cause a repair to be required in the near future? Okay, so now it's time for a road test on your inspection. Ideally, you want to start the car from cold. Preferably the owner has not already started it up and got the engine warm. You want to start it from cold, and rather than just head straight out on road tests, stop and have a good listen to that engine. Walk around and take a look at the exhaust gases too. We don't want any oily residue burning off. We don't want any strange tapping noises from the engine at cold. So start it up from cold, have a good listen, and when you're comfortable, set out on your road test. Once you're out on road test, allow the engine to warm up, again checking for any signs of smoke or strange noises, and once she is warmed up, drive the car quite hard. I'm not talking about thrashing it senseless or anything, but you want to put your foot down well and truly hard, and you want to see how that car feels. Does it veer to the left or the right? Does it pull in a straight line? Are there any strange noises or whirring noises or anything like that? Is there anything you didn't pick up on a static test that you can now hear on a road test? Going to the corners, you want a nice strong left bend and a right bend, and again, how does the car feel under some pressure when cornering? It wants to feel nice, planted and stable. You don't want any wobbles or strange noises, or the car to feel too uncertain. That is an indication that maybe some suspension bushes are worn, for example. So does it feel good when driven quite hard? And then the other thing you want to do, get it up to some speed, of course within the legal speed limit, and brake pretty damn hard. And what you're doing here is waiting for any juddering from the brakes or unevenness. Again, does it pull to the left, does it pull to the right, or is there any vibration associated with braking hard? If you can accelerate hard and brake hard and the car feels good and strong and planted on the road, that's a really good sign. But before you do that, I suggest you arm yourself with a fault code reader. It's hardly ever that we see a Jaguar these days that when you plug in a diagnostic tool, there aren't a number of fault codes present. These diagnostic machines are incredibly cheap these days. You don't need something all singing and dancing, but before you buy a car, you really, really want to plug in and check for any diagnostic codes that are present. And the way that you do that is you plug in, you read the codes, you can either Google what those codes are, or some more sophisticated diagnostic tools will actually tell you what they are. Write those codes down, clear them down with the tool, and then you're ready to go on road test. And what you want to do is go on a nice long road test, preferably at least 20 miles, and then reread the fault codes. If you've got new fresh fault codes that have come back on, you've got yourself a problem that needs professionally investigating. Now let's take a look underneath, because I need to talk to you about rust. Okay, so here we are underneath this particular XF, and I wanted to just take a couple of moments to show you some of the things that we find go wrong with them and where we can see some wear and tear. And I appreciate when you're looking to buy a car, you don't necessarily always have the luxury of having it up in a ramp, but at least as this one is in the air, we can get a good look at some of these issues. The first one I'm going to point to is these suspension bushes. Now, on a slightly higher mileage car, these can get particularly soft, and what you're going to notice is when you drive the car on the road, it's going to feel a bit squishy and it's going to feel a bit uncertain, particularly when you're cornering. Quite difficult to check them on the drive or when you're doing an inspection yourself, but when you're actually in the car and driving, you want to be feeling to see how the steering feels, and if it's feeling a bit wobbly, it's very likely to be down to these bushes. But the biggest problem with these XF really underneath comes down to rust and corrosion. And if you just take a look at this this track rod arm here, this is not quite an MOT failure yet, but it's going to be very soon, and this is absolutely classic of some of the things we start to see with some of the components underneath starting to get quite corroded as the vehicle gets a little bit older. And as we work our way down, it gets a little bit worse in some ways. So You'll see here on this chassis member, this really is quite rusty. Again, this is not an MOT failure, and I would say on this particular vehicle, we've probably caught it early enough to treat it. But if this is not treated in the next 2 to 3 years, you're into some serious repairs, even to the point where this vehicle could probably be written off by the cost of repair. And just look at this cross member here. This is very heavily corroded, and this will need to be changed on this vehicle. Now, fortunately, it's a standalone item. It can come out on its own and be changed, but that does need to be changed on this vehicle. And then as we move on to this subframe, now this is expensive stuff to change. This is a very large subframe, and unfortunately, a lot of the Jaguar Land Rover vehicles do tend to suffer from this type of corrosion. At this point, I think we're just going to get away with this vehicle. It's got quite heavy surface corrosion, but it is still surface. But again, if this is not treated in the next 2 or 3 years, this is going to need a new subframe, and that is a cost potentially that would actually write this vehicle off. So when you're looking for a vehicle, you definitely want to be looking at these subframes, these suspension mounts, and looking for corrosion. If you're not sure, get a professional in to check it. If this subframe is heavily corroded, you could be talking about £4,000 or £5,000 to change it. So these are quite crucial. There's one other thing I just want to show you here. This fuel tank sender here, this pipe from the fuel tank, quite common to leak on these vehicles. This one's bone dry, that's good, but while you're under it, if you can get underneath it to look, you want to be looking, make sure there's no leaks. And just look at this. This is a heat shield for the exhaust system, and completely corroded through, possibly going to cause you a knocking noise or a rattling noise at high speed. Again, when you're getting under this vehicle and when you are inspecting them, try and get under and see, what you can see, if there's any damage, if there's anything loose or heavy corrosion. We're actually going to treat this one, we're going to lano guard it, and then we're going to underseal it, which should be good for about another 4 or 5 years. But as I say, when you're looking to purchase a vehicle, you want to identify these things before you part with any money. So, in summary, the Jaguar XF is a great car with really strong engines, but at this age and this mileage, there can be problems with them. So when you see a car advertised for sale, be prepared to look at a few of them and take your time making sure you choose the right one. Does it feel good on the road? Do the body panels look nice and straight? Has the engine got any sorts of strange noises or smoke or anything like that? And do you generally get a feeling that it's good? Try and look at a few if you can, and don't just rush into buying the first one straight away. And if any doubt, bring in a professional. You'll often find by getting someone to professionally look at the vehicle before you buy it, the cost of that inspection can be offset by the few things that they might find that need a little bit of work or a little bit of service. So I wish you really well on hunting for an XF. If we can be of any help to you at all, we're at vizu.com, and I'm Paul, and it'd be a pleasure to speak to you.